Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Kalayim, Perek Aleph, Halachos, Dalid, Hey, and Vav. We're going to be learning today Dav Dalid. We left off Mamish on top of the Amid. The Gemara is going to begin today with the Isser of grafting vegetables. In other words, up until now, we were speaking about Kilei Zeroyim, planting grains, legumes, vegetables, in close proximity in a way where they appear to be mixed. That is the Isur Midoi Raisa in Eretz Yisrael. We also mentioned that there is no prohibition of planting vegetables, grains, or legumes in close proximity to trees. By trees, however, the prohibition is grafting. We may not graft two species of trees, one into the other. We never spoke about grafting vegetables. The Gemara is going to give us scenarios of various vegetables that are a product of one being grafted into the other. And as we learned yesterday, and we'll give a few words of Chassidus to suggest perhaps a reason that even though Kilei Zeroyim, as we mentioned, is all asan mido eiraisa, nevertheless, post facto, even by trees, where there's going to be an obligation to destroy the tree that was grafted, but the branches of the tree that may be replanted, the seeds that could produce offspring to give continuity to this kalayim is something that's completely permitted. We wondered yesterday, why is that so? We'll give up Asfara Ula Yashleim. Mishnah Hey, Halacha Hey will list various plants that, in spite of them being similar to each other, they are still nevertheless kalayim. And as we will learn in the Gemara, a big klal today. That like this. Remember the rule. If two items are considered from the same species, even though there are two varieties of the same species, we already learned that they are not subject to kalayim. Plants from different species generally are subject to the isur of kalayim. However, even then, that means even if you have two species, if they have a resemblance that's so strong that they appear to be from the same species, when we're speaking about appearance to be being the same, it doesn't have to be in all of their features. Even if only the fruits appear to be the same, even if only the leaves appear to be the same, again, even though they are from different species, we will learn today that they will not be subject to the Isur of Kalayim, with one, however, that if they have these resemblances, that means the fruits look alike, the leaves look alike, but if their taste remains distinct, then they are subject to kalayim because they are from different species. We're going to repeat this when we learn this inside. That's going to be the big cloud that we're going to learn today. Now, what will be very unusual and exceptional will be the end of today's daf. We're going to learn halacha vav. The topic of halacha vav is going to be learned in the 8th chapter in this Masechta. We're going to move on to cross-breeding animals. Now, really, when it comes to the Isur of Kalayim by animals, there are two different prohibitions. One, Pasuk and Parshas Kedoshim, Behem techoloi sarbia Kalayim, which means not to crossbreed animals one with the other. There's another prohibition, Pasuk and Parshas Kiseitze, Loi sacharash b'shoir ubechamor yachdav, not to have two different animals leading together, working together. The latter is going to be the main topic of Perek Shmoyne, the 8th chapter of Masechtas Kalayim. What we will have today is going to be a Mishnah that's going to juxtapose. We have been learning about Kilei Zeroyim, including the Isur of Arkava of Ilanois. We're going to learn the Isur of not cross-breeding animals. We're going to have the same concept, that if you have animals that are from the same species, even though they're not exactly the same, they are allowed to be mated together. If they are from two different species, even though they look similar, they will not be allowed to be crossbred together. What we will learn is that an animal in the category of behemoth and an animal in the category of chaya, these are categories that the Torah gives, not only concerning kalayim, but b'chlal, when it comes to the dinim of kashrus. In English, it's called a domesticated animal. That's called a behemoth. And generally, there are three types of behemoths, right? Bakar v'tzoin. Bakar are cattle. Tzoin includes in it goats and sheep. But we'll see, for example, what is a dog? A dog is a machlokes tanoim that made in the Chachamim, whether it's in the category of behema or a chaya. And we're going to see that even according to, we'll develop the dog topic interestingly today. What we will learn, the kitzur will be, is that behema and chaya are always included in the prohibition of crossbreeding, even if they look extremely similar one to the other, simply by the fact that it's not just two species. One is like in the category of behema, and the other is chaya. What we will not have in the Mishnah is any mention of birds. We will extrapolate from a braisa that birds are also subject to the prohibition of crossbreeding. The Gemara is actually going to ask that really it could be learned from a Mishnah. Why do we have to come onto the braisa, as we will see later in today's daf? And the final topic, which is fascinating, will be a question whether one is or not allowed to crossbreed creatures of the sea. And we'll speak out when we get there. We'll learn from Masechta B'choros. We'll quote from Bavli B'choros that generally fish, not shaykh crossbreeding, because they don't mate physically. Generally, it's the females that they let eggs and they land on the seabed, and the males put zera into it. There isn't physical contact between fish when they mate, but there are exceptions. You have dolphins, you have whales. That's why Chazal won't call it fish. They're going to call it creatures of the sea. Question there is whether they are or not included. That will be the final topic of today. It's mamish fascinating. So again, Daf Daled, Amud Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid, says the Gemara, continuing from where we learned yesterday. Okay, we're learning a Braisa. Here, kif tcharid al gabe yarbuz. And again, just to make it clear, you have to have so many different nuschos. So we're following the girsa of the shinu nuschos. And another thing, tcharid, I know it means a beat, but it doesn't mean a beat, because the types of beats that we are familiar with today did not exist when the Mishnayos were written, but it's some original beat. Now, what's a yarbuz? What is das a yarbuz? So look inside the top Rashidilio. Every word here is subject to different opinions. Teradin, that's the modern day word of beats in plural. Agabe yarbuz. So he says, V'yesh mefarshim. I just want to bring one opinion over here from the Rashidilio. Yarbuz is finigu. That's fenugreek. Okay? So now these are two vegetables. And here, I'm just also l'stamba, that achagav, milsagav urcha, that you can't graft vegetables together. Because if you can't plant them in close proximity, you can make a kal v'chaymet. Certainly they may not be grafted together, but if it was done in the beginning of the Braisa yesterday, right in the Gimel Amud Beis, the Braisa spoke about a goy shehirkiv. Could be we're speaking about a goy shehirkiv, even though, as we mentioned yesterday, that there was a machlekes rishonim whether goyim are allowed to graft or not. And according to the Rambam, grafting is something goyim may not do. Actually, the Rambam says two things what they may not do. They can't graft, which is worse than planting clothes. Grafting, they're putting one on the other, and crossbreeding animals. And I want to add something about why the logic behind the Rambam is because it's somehow connected to Avodah Zarah, and Goyim are commanded not to worship idols. And what's Pshat Avodah Zarah? It's the denial of God's mastery in the world. There can be the ignorant denial, and then there can be, like we mentioned, that there is a Seder Ishtalshalush that God put in place, through which God creates every moment, everything from anew. But everything physically has a ruchniistic counterpart, and that's the way the energy goes from the Eibishter all the way down to this world, so to say. Even though there's Soivev Kalamim and Mamalik Kalamim, and Soivev goes direct, as we learn a lot in Hasidus. Nevertheless, the concept of a crossbreed is that this type doesn't have a ruchniistic counterpart during the 6 days of creation. So you're countering the Seder Ishtalshalus. It's like an affront to God. I'm going to get some words to this, and all of that will give a reason why the Rambam holds. So when the Braisa says a goy did it, doesn't mean it was done beheaded. It means once it was done, it was done. Here again, post facto, unlike Kilei Hakerem, which remains not only Asr Bachila, Asr Bahana, other than Kilei Hakerem, you can take a seed from the grafted vegetable, and you now and the question was why? That's what we left off yesterday. So I want to suggest the following. I don't know if David is not here yet. That the question is, when a person does this and they create, so to say, a new being that doesn't have a mazel l'mayla. What does that mean? It means that it will never have a mazel l'mayla, or during Sheishis Yimei Bereishis, God did not choose to create this type. But now that you made a shidduch l'mata, everything is being recreated by God. Now, so to say, you added a new channel in Maisa Bereishis. If the latter is correct, now you created a new flow. So now it's done already. That would make to me more sense why now you can replant it. The replanting of it is not being makhish, denying or affronting anything, because it's done already.
Something you grew, you replanted.
That's the whole point. Halachically, that's exactly the point. Even though Hashem told us, let's say in Eretz Yisrael, I have another kasha, like why can't you do it b'chutz la'aretz? Well, we'll leave that. But you're not allowed to do it. One thing is clear, what we're learning. Once it's done, we're speaking about harkava, we're speaking about kilei zroyim, we're going to speak about kilei behemoths. You created a new breed. That's the cloning today. What we're learning now is even though you were not allowed to do it, now that it's done, you can give continuity to it. Now, the Gemara wants to know what is the child of this Tarid and Yarbuz, whatever they are. My Nafik Minoin. And here again, different versions. So the Gemara answers, it's Krus Balnin, where's Kevan? It's Atriplex Hortensis. Go Google that. And they touch it, and that's also garden or Rachi. So if you didn't understand the first, now you understand the latter. The only thing is, again, we have Google. Weiter. Next. Weiter, says the Gemara. Whether this is the Braisa, whether this is the Gemara, you have to know, you have to get more familiar with Yerushalmi. Zargoin v'lefes my nafak min hoin. So Zargoin, even though that it sounds like it's a shoot of a grapevine, l'chu'ura cannot mean a shoot of a grapevine, because we're learning about that which once it's done, you can have benefit. That's not the case with the vines. By Kilei Akerem, it becomes Asur Bahano. So many understand that Zargoin is some sort of a shoot that is similar to a grapevine. In other words, it's not a tree, it's like a vine type from which grows a Zargoin. If you take that and you graft it together with a lefes, or you stick the lefes into the Zargoin, what comes out of it is kaf nine, a certain type of carrot. Now, if it mamish means carrot, I'm curious, does that mean that all carrots are mamzerim? Could be. But now again, now that it's done, it's done. Shumar v'karpas. What's karpas? In Lubavitch, onions only. Karpas means over here celery. You have to know how to touch what it means over here. The Yerushalmis, what do they have for karpas? So shumar is some sort of fennel. What will come from it? Pit, ru, siliyoin, parsley. Final. So yeah, it's amazing, right? In other words, maybe the Gemara, the point of the Gemara is that common vegetables today could be also wissen sein that they are a product of a crossbreed.
This is herbs, right?
The vegetable
parsley is an herb.
You have to know. So the Rambam, we learned that Rambam, like he has like categories. There's seeds in the seeds themselves. Remember that there are 3 types of seeds. Okay. In Chazal, the way we would categorize everything, Vlad, just to know. Here, you have vegetables, legumes, and grains. And everything is a subcategory in everything, including herbs. Luzin are almonds. Luzin or butmin. So butmin is terabinth. Pastu. I Googled it yesterday. Gavin is sleeping. Need a coffee. A lot of things to Google. A lot of pictures. It helps to know what it means. A lot of research was done over here, which is a yashut koyach to them. My nafik minoin, pistachios. Again, pistakin. And now, we're moving to a tree. Zaysin is an olive tree. Zaysin, verimin. Verimin is the jujubes. Man nafik mebenayon, shivzin. So rimin is thorn jujubes. Shivzin is tam jujubes. So the juju that the Mishnah spoke about is already a result. And again, l'chayda, I just want to say l'chayda for you that the reason why you are allowed to give continuity to something that is kalayim is because once you make it kalayim, you, so to say, created a new tzinoy, a new ruchnias dika mazel to it, because it doesn't go from atzmus to the physical. God chose to create it through a seder ishtalshalos. So it would make sense that once you already made this new ruchnias dika pathway, now that it's there, it's there. You know, you have a famous story of the Baal Shem Tov, that whether true or not, it could have been true, that there was a couple that asked the Baal Shem Tov for a child, and he never gave them a brach. And one time he gave them a brach. And when he gave them a brach, he heard a basker that announced that you, the holy Baal Shem Tov, you knew that milmaila, there was no tzina, they were not meant to have children. You giving them a bracha, it's al derech kalayim. That's what, you're like forcing something that was not. Now you gave a bracha, tzaddik goyzer hakadosh baruch hu mekayim. It's like if I plant kalayim, I make kalayim. So it's going to be. Once it's going to be, it's going to be. That child had a neshama, but you lost your chelik lo'olam haba for doing that. And the beauty, the Baal Shem Tov heard it, he began to dance. And he says he always wondered whether in the back of his mind somewhere he's serving Hashem Shaloi Lishman. Now he knows he's doing it because God wants. I'm just pointing out that just like a child, the child has a neshama. There was a connection to something ruchniistic. It's not a machine. So l'chayr, it's the same thing, and that's why l'chayr, since we shouldn't have done it, but once the holy Baal Shem Tov did it, by the Baal Shem Tov we have to be careful. He did it. It's done. And maybe some of us are the descendants of these kids. Who knows? That's what the Gemara is trying to carrots and pistachios and jujubes. They're all kalayim. Oh, that's what we said. Yes, correct. We said that yesterday. Chutz, Mishita Saramam, that doesn't learn our sugya that way. He always stands alone. According to the Rambam from Kios and
Rabbi, after, sorry.
And by the way, just add for the vegetables, very good. And a vegetable in the almond tree, unless terebinth is a tree, that would more fit. Yeah, that's the fakir that a guy can do it. And the question is, why can a guy do it? If there is no tzina or milmaila, why are we allowed to plant kiles roim b'chutz la'aretz, even with rabbanan? Kashas, yeah. It's Kevin. You were asking
After
something?
how many generations is a client like not like a mamzer? I mean, how?
Never. You know, when I maybe I should take back the word mamzer, because a mamzer is also lavi b'kal Hashem. A mamzer is really always a mamzer. Never get rid of it. And these products right away you can eat it. You can replant it. Okay, bite it. Halacha Hey is gonna now list items. We're going out in the other direction. Two items that are very similar. Until now, the very similar are allowed to be planted. Einam kalayim, as we said. This Mishnah is going to speak about items that are very similar, but they're still kalayim. And as we spoke in the intro, we'll learn in the Gemara the criteria for us. So tzunayin and nafos. So tzunayin is a radish. Let's go with nafos. It's an elongated radish. More or less the same, but it's not the same. Chardel and lipson, mustard and wild mustard. The last Yavanis, Greek gourd, and remutza. Either with mitzvahs means the last mitzvahs, or with remutza. Remutza we just learned yesterday, right? It's that gourd that you have to put it into embers after you pick it, prior to which it's too bitter. So it's called ember gourd. So it's the last. It even has the same name. Chiddush, it's not the same. And here the Gemara is going to give the big rule of Rabbi Yonasan. Exactly. So why? So remember, if two things are considered of the same species, they won't be kalayim. Period. If two things are from different species, you're going to say kalayim. Chiddush lekula, that even though they are from two different species, if they have some similarities, either the fruits look alike. It's all about marasayim by kilei zeroim, or the leaves look alike. Not one and the other. Either or, Rabbi Yonasan holds chiddush. So since they look alike, they won't be kalayim, with the exception if they taste very different. Then it goes back. Since it's two different species, even though it looks alike fruit, even though it looks alike and the leaves, it's gavaldik. You have appearance and you have tam. Huh? No, the taste, the dissimilarity of the taste makes it bad. Makes it back to what it really is. What is it really? It's two different species. The chiddush of kalayim, not kilei akedem, kilei zenoim, and we'll learn it again and again and again and again. We learn this in the Rambam, and every year people are shocked. It's a lot of it is marasayim. It's about them. So since they look alike, chiddush of Rabbi Yonasan is that they don't have to look alike both in fruit and in the leaves. It can be either or. Let's read it now inside. Rabbi Yonasan, yesh mehen shehilchu achar. Yesh mehen means kula. There are times that Chazal took two different species that because the fruit look alike. The yesh mehen either or. Shehilchu achar, even though they're dissimilar species, but since the leaves appear, they look, the appearance is the same. Vaited, they excluded it from the Isur of Kalayim. And now Rabbi Yonasan will give an example. Halef is v'hatznoin. Hilchu behem achar apedi. Even though they're two different species, because their fruits look alike. Lefes and nafois, two different species. Why are they allowed to be planted together? Their fruits don't look alike because the leaves look alike. We're learning the Gemara the way that Rambam learns it. Look inside the Rashidilio, it's like in the middle of the right hand column. Yesh man shil choachar apedi. Says the Rambam. It says the Rashidilio. Rambam Zal in the third chapter of Kalayim. Halachi say involved. Even though they are two species, or like simcha, exactly alike. No, dimion gadol. However, that's defined. There's always going to be this area where you can move here and there. A very similar. I mean, you look at it, you know it's not the same, but people can think, it's two subspecies. That's called, it looks enough for people to say it looks like two subspecies. There, like chashashu l'kalayim zemzeh, she'ein holchem l'kalayim, kalayim means kilei zerayim. Kilei kedem. Elo achar mares ha'ayin. Anyway, that's the way. I'm reading this because other Rishonim learned this Gemara mamish the opposite. So we're going that Rabbi Yonasan is saying lakula. They're two different species, which should be also. They are muted because they look alike. Aber now comes the exception to the exception. Hativa means akasha against Rabbi Yonasan. Harei tzunoin v'nafos that we just learned in the Mishnah. Tzunoin v'nafos is the first shidduch of Mishnah. The Mishnah says is kalayim. But the Harei doima. Here it's karta lemalyusa, because both the fruits and the leaves look the same. Besemar kalayim, and the Mishnah says it's kalayim. He's saying it's perfect. They're two different species, but if they look alike, it's okay. No, they look alike. And by the tsunoin and the nafais, here you go after the taste. So here we're saying, in other words, we're making an exception. It's like a rule. If they doime, and then an exception that since they taste different, it's like two people look alike until they open their mouths.
So these three pairs,
and then they taste so different. That's it. You'll never compare them. Nah.
and these three pairs, it's just that they probably taste different.
Right?
They all look, these three pairs in this Mishnah, they all look the same.
No. Let's say lav dafka. Let me begin that. These pairs of the Mishnah are different species. Let's begin with that. They're different species. That's why they're alike. The only question is, there are times that things are of different species, but since they look alike, it's okay.
Look like around the same.
Yeah. So must be that like the Gemara didn't say by all of the cases, only by Tzunayin and Nafis. I don't know if Chardal and Lifson look alike.
Why would they put together in this?
No, because Chardal and Lifson I don't have the same names in English, mustard and wild mustard. In other words, when things, many times we say they have the same name. What has a name? The last, Yavon is the last, mystic, the last. No, it's let me word it that way. Good. The name doesn't do anything. Name means nothing over here. Why did people call it gourd? What could be from other criterions? In other words, Chazal didn't give it the names. We don't know what Adam Arishan called it. I would say the Adam Arishan did not give it the same name because the name is Taka the Tzinoy. Okay. Now, again, like we mentioned in the intro, by Behema, there are two categories. Guys, remember this. Kila Behema includes Parshas Kedoshim, which will be the topic of our Mishnah, where the Mishnah says, where the Pasuk says that the Pasuk says, no, what's the Lashon HaPasuk? Behem techoloi sarbiya kalayim. Don't cause animals to mate together, all details. In other words, you can't mamish physically mate them. That's an Isur. We learned in Babli B'chodesh Daf Ches about could they give offsprings, and the answer is that was the big Chazal over there. That there are two things that if they gestate for the same amount of time, that's a soid, Hashem li'reyav, and they are in the same position naturally when they mate, if they have those two they can create offspring together. That's the whole thing about the Nachash, and the Nachash gestates for 7 years, and that's when they challenged Chazal, and the whole debate that we were forced to have, Rabbi Shimon Hananya with the Chachma Yatuna came because of this. We know information, like only because God gave it.
What do you mean by Sod Hashem Yireh?
That these we're learning about things that even now, even now with all the Chachma that God gifted to man, we don't know all the creatures that exist. These statements only God, only the Creator can make. This is the rule in the whole creation. If two beings, if the female carries the child for the same length of time, and their physical position of when they mate is the same, if those two types will go together, they can crossbreed. That was the whole thing. Yeah, yes. We learned about the mermaid, about the person and the dolphin. How can they go together? Because they are similar. It's panim al panim. There's only 3 creatures, I think the Gemara says, that made panim al panim. Think. Adam, I think some the fish that make physical, I don't remember, Nachash. That was a whole ma'aseh with the Nachash.
So how does that?
So I want to. That's just an expression of how would we know that? How would you know that if God wouldn't have told it to Moshe Rabbeinu?
Because it was in a Disney movie.
How would you know this information?
In other words, you wouldn't know something unless
You cannot know that even now. If God wouldn't have said it, if Chazal wouldn't have said it, maybe they'll find in nature 2 species that don't gestate the same amount of months, and they can be crossbred. And that will slug up the whole Chazal. Other religions that are not emes will never make these statements. So when you make these types of statements, you say, wow, this is the Ruach HaKodesh. Mamish.
Could you re-say what you're saying, that if science goes against Torah,
Science never goes against Torah. Science, that's the whole point.
Science never goes against Torah?
Science is learning. It's like a student. It's like, does a student go against the teacher? They're grappling in the dark. They're trying to figure out the science of yesterday was already refuted by the science of today. The science of today is going to be refuted by the science of tomorrow.
David Sachs always says that if there's a contradiction between science and Torah, either you don't know the science or you don't know the Torah. One or the other.
Let me quote the Rebbe. If there's a contradiction between science and the Torah, and then science doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. Okay. It says the Holy Mishnah, and with the greatest respect to him. But that's the right way of wording it. It's not the content is the same, Danny, but that's the word. Okay. Now, so what do we say? So that's what we're talking about now, because it fits, it's the crossbreeding. Then you have another isur in Parshas Kisei say not to have 2 different types of animals leading the plow at the same time, working together. Mikan, if you're a shadchan, to be careful, because when you make a shidduch simcha that's very dissimilar, that's exactly what you did. You violated that law. You're getting it's already different. Get nervous. Here we go. So here you have a wolf and a dog. You can say they look alike, right? They do, but nish. Kelef, now what's Kelef Kufri? You have over here either a small dog, just called Kelef Kufri, a village dog, a Kufri, and a fox. Again, they look alike. A goat and a gazelle. They both have the horns. Haye'elim, the ibex, and the chelim. The chelim is a female shepsela. In English, written E-W-E, and I know in the past, whenever I pronounced it, the Rabbi corrected me. I'm afraid to pronounce it. I have trauma. Huh? I'm going to say you. No, it's not going to go. He's going to make a correction over here. Hasus v'haperet. Now, just to know that a peret itself is a crossbreed. We learned 2 days ago this whole word that and the peret. Yeah, the question is about, can you mate them, even if they won't reproduce? The act of mating them. In other words, what did we learn 2 days ago? It was beautiful. That even something that is a crossbreed from two types, so you would think that this crossbreed, you can make a shidduch between either the father side or the mother side. And from this Rabisteve, from that Rabisteve, Chasidische, because no, the crossbreed is amin b'fnei atzmai.
So mules,
That's
which are
right.
sterile anyhow, we're just discussing whether they can mate with.
Mate means kemechachoil b'shushay feres. That's what Chazal say. In other words, when correct, either you have a person that learns science and they don't learn Torah, so they don't know, they're amaratzim. So you're gemait, he can make them.
Okay,
means
but a male and a
doesn't mean the
female
result.
mule, if there is such a thing, they could be with each other, even though they can't have children.
100%, clearly.
But not with the horse and not with the
The
dog.
Parshas Kedoshim, I think Rashi says it there. It means the people in the business of it's a business. This we're just not familiar with it. We live in the city, so they begashmias, they mate the animals. Torah says if they're collide. Next, the chamer and the aroid. Again, in English, donkey and a wild donkey. Again, you would think it's the same. And all of these. So we learned from Rabbi Yonason, you see how the Gemara, the Chachma, how they put it in it. When it comes to plants, we do say that appearances are significant. When it comes to behemoths, appearances are not significant. I mean, even though they look alike, the Talmud, I know it's different. It's a different thing. Yes, okay, so now infers the Gemara, or as Dan says, extrapolates. Thank you. Now we're going to extrapolate in the opposite direction. The direction that we went, Rabbi Yechanan and Rav, in the beginning of the Masechta. Let's go back. That when it says Chitin and Zunin, Einam Kalaim Zabuzeh. Shul and Shifain? No. No. So Oidem and what's the second one in the Masechta? Yeah, what's the second? So Oidem and Daf Aleph, not Daf Beis. So Oidem and Shabbat Shul. Thank you. So Oidem and Shabbat Shul are not Kilayim. Oh, says Rabbi Yechanan that only those pairs are not Kilayim Zebozeh, but with the others they are Kilayim. Now we're doing the same logic in the other direction. Our Mishnah we're speaking about crossbreeding animals. We're speaking about types that are Kilayim. So what about now one from one group to be Meshadachit with one from the other group? Satmer Labavich, like this. Can you do that? Oh. So Caleb is from group number one. Right? Ze'ev and Caleb is group number one. Group number two, guys, is Caleb, Kufri, and Shual. So when the Mishnah says, on every of the groups, yes, Kilayim Zebozeh, I want to know if I take one of this group with one of the other group. So let's make the same deal in the other direction. That Caleb and Caleb Kufri are not Kilayim. And it would sound okay because they both are Caleb. And it's not like Rabbi Meir. Now, on Daf Ayin Dalet, in our pagination, here in Masechtas Kilayim, we're going to have a machlokes Chanoim. Regarding the status of a dog, like we mentioned, what is a dog? A chaya or a behema? Depends how it barks. Doesn't work that way. which is achai means a non-domesticated creature. It's amazing. A machlikas tanoim. Rav Meir holds that a dog is a behema. Many people in LA, they side with Rav Meir here. The Chachamim hold that a dog is a chaya. He was looking at me. Do you have a dog? I forgot. No, you were good. We're on the same page. Chayes. Exactly. So now, hold on. Now remember, l'kula alma, behema v'chaya are always kalayim. They can look alike. They can have the same leaves, the same ears, the same schwanz, the same taste, the same everything. Behema v'chaya is kalayim. So now that we're being medayik, one second. Kelev and Kelev Kufrim are not kalayim. That won't be like Rav Meir. Why is that? Because even though Rav Meir, guys, the Kelev Kufrin is no. It's all chayes. That a dog is a behema, he meant all dogs. He didn't mean all dogs.
Like wild animals.
Oh, the Rav Meir, the Rav Meir, all it is kalayim. Why? Because even though Rav Meir says Kelev is in behema, Rav Meir, we know, Rav Meir says that the Kelev Kufri is a min chayim. So according to the Chachamim, all dogs are chayas. So it's okay, make the deal. Chaya. And that the only prohibition in our Mishnah are the groups with each other. But one from one group with another from another group is good. Okay, good. But according to Rav Meir, it came back. Since Rav Meir holds generally Kelev is a behema, Rav Meir is wearing to the Chachamim Kelev Kufri, Shumin Chaya. So the Oy Bazoi, Kelev and Kelev Kufri, Al Rav Meir will be Kalayim. Okay, so the deal won't go according to Rav Meir. Now, the Mishnah, I know that we are just beginning, but in the next Mishnah, no one spoke about birds. By birds, unlike by fish, we mentioned fish in the introduction, we'll repeat the fish from the Saptas V'choides, birds physically made. The only thing by birds is that by kachin, when we say, Ein kamos v'zachrus ba'oifis. Why? Because it's very difficult for us to see which is male, which is female, unlike by animals. But by birds, there's male and female, and most of the birds, they copulate, they mate. Begashmis, there's a physical, huh? Here we go. Danny's not even Danny's left. Okay, Danny's all right. Now, says the Gemara.
I said nothing.
Yes, but you were happy that the Olam is getting educated to correct the rabbi that you're not. Yeah, you sit in the background and smile. You smiled. So the Mishnah never spoke about birds. So you would think maybe there's no issue with birds. No, Amar Rabbi Yechanan that Itaisai mean the bar the lawyer. Very interesting. So you have a bride. So according to the Marafulda, bar the lawyer is the name of a chacham. He was the one that came with the brayso. So what about birds? Is there an issue or never or not an issue? So Rabbi Yechanan says, "Oh, I have a brayso that was taught by bar the lawyer." So there you see that there's a problem with mating birds. Tenisa, we learned with a pisyoine. Now we're going to go with Rashi. Rashi writes, pisyoine is a partridge. Okay, even picture. Tarnagol is a chicken. Tavos is a peacock.
Sorry, Rabbi, driving.
It's okay.
Apologize.
You can multitask. It's okay. No, Kalaim Zabozeh. So the kids say, what do you see? You see in the Braisa that there's Kalaim. Now you have the Shlakish's brother-in-law, who always would challenge him. He's telling his brother-in-law, Rabbi Yechanan, you have to bring a Braisa that you found from the Bar the Loya. It's a Beferish Mishnah. A Mishnah says that there's Kalaim by birds. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar. Amar means he asked him, Mishnah Shleimo Shanolanu Rebbe. In Bavli, the Mishnah is in Bava Kama Daf Nun Dalo Damid Beis. Now there we're learning the Perek Shor Shanaga Chasapara. We're learning various dinim of damages. Shor Shanaga Chasapara. So you would think it's only if the ox gored the para. So says the Mishnah, I'm quoting the Mishnah, Echad Shor, the Echad Kol Behema. When it comes to the dinim of Nefilas Haboir, right, the dinim that you're chayev for the board, even though that it's not in your reshus. So Akosov Ki'ilu B'Reshusai. The Torah only spoke about the Shor Hamor. Says the Mishnah, no, it's any animal. Kalayim. V'chein, I'm quoting the Mishnah. Chaya v'oid kayoytza boy. The Mishnah says that the Mishnah said that. I'm quoting the words of the Mishnah. V'chein chayv kol yotze behen. And the Mishnah says, Kain lama nemar shoyder chamor. So answers the Mishnah diber hakosuf b'hoif. The Torah gives an example. When the Torah gives an example, it doesn't always mean it's only that. Bottom line is, it's gavaldik. It's a beferish Mishnah that says that by oifis there's an issue of kalayim. Why did Rabbi Yochanan need to go to Abraisa? Answers, two answers. Answer number one, either Rabbi Yochanan himself answered or Rabbi Yoina answered that. Let's go with Rabbi Yoina. That Rabbi Yochanan needed. Why? It's beautiful. Tanin on Taman, we learned over there again. Bava Kama, Bavli Dafa Nun Dalit Chaya. Mishnah says v'chein Chaya v'oif. Now, the Mishnah did not say what Chaya is. Where do we have a detail of what Chaya is? Over here. What do I mean by that? One might have thought when you read the Mishnah over there that Chayas are included in the Isur of Kalayim. You would have thought, especially after learning Rabbi Yonasan. I know Rabbi Yonasan is a Gemara. That maybe if Chayas resemble each other, maybe there's no Kalayim. Maybe if they resemble each other, like by Kilei Sarayim, if they resemble each other, there's no Kalayim, with the exception of the Tam. So where did we find the details of what birds, what Chayas in our Mishnah? That was the beauty. Even though they resemble each other. Similarly, Tanin and Behema Tamon, and nevertheless, Uperashta Hacha, same idea. We have the horse and the mule and the donkey. These are behemoths, but they look like each other. So it's needed to have a Mishnah here because we got details of the bird. You're right. The Mishnah writes the words there it's written boy. Doesn't matter. But what about birds that resemble each other? The tarnukak that you wouldn't have known from over there. So also I'll give you another answer. That Yos, it was good, richtig. It was correct that he needed to quote a brayso. That this is a bomb answer. Like we mentioned before, when it comes to Kilei Behema, there are two categories of Kilei Behema. One is you can't take two different types of animals to lead, to work together. So when the Mishnah writes in Bava Kama that there's Kalayim by birds, maybe it only meant you can't get two different types of birds to schlep something together. The Mishnah did not specify what Kalayim. Where do you see that the Isur of Kalayim by your oif is also concerning mating only from the Braisa of Bar Deloya? That's a great answer. Rav Kahana, Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar. And now we're moving on to the final topic. That Kahana, which is the great Rav Kahana, asked Reish Lakish, what about Hamarbia B'chayoy Sayam? Again, we don't say dogim, B'chayoy Davches, clearly fish. The female fish spawn eggs. That's the word in English. The male fish, they fertilize by releasing milk. And all the fancy American words. Bottom line is they're physically not mating. So it's not shaykh to make the isur. But there are other parts, there are other sea creatures that are not called fish, like a dolphin, like a whale.
They're considered mammals.
By you, by us, chayas hayam. So the question is, and here not we have a Mishnah, not we have a Braisa. Says Reish Lakish Gavaldik. You're right. We don't find it in the Mishnah or a Braisa, but I know the answer. You know where you go back to? The base of the Isur by all of Kalayim is because by Sheshu Simei Bereishis that we're going to be reading Mamish now, the Torah says Lim Mineihem, Lim Mineihu. That means Hashem wants for these strands of DNA to remain pure. The same, and that's why, like we explained, when you crossbreed, when you plant things too close together, when you graft, you're creating you're modifying the DNA. Same as by the fish. That when God created the fish, that uf, hon, ksiv, behen, liminei hen, or liminei hem, look inside the last man food. We'll stop over here. Kolaymer af hey name yasur kalayim because the chsiv behu limineyan. The alfin limineo miyabasha. The source of Isur Kalayim is limineo. Same word is written over there by the Chayes Hayam. So that's the answer to our question. It's asur.